Finally, I'm going to end by looking at some places that are declining. So I'll look at Muncie and Kokomo, but I'll also look at Gary and Anderson, so two cities that aren't located here in this bottom three. I will not be looking at Michigan City and LaPorte, just because I don't know them that well, and instead I'm going to focus on Gary, since we do get a lot of students from Gary, actually, here at IUPUI. To help us out as far as finding these places on the map, we'll see Anderson and Muncie. They're along I-69 just north and east of Indianapolis. They're the A and the M. Then just to the north and west of them is Kokomo, the K. And then up there, top up by Chicago, is Gary. And if you're wondering where Michigan City and LaPorte is, it's about halfway between South Bend and Gary. We'll see very similar trends when we look at Muncie and Anderson. There's a lot of overlap there. And so this I-69 cluster of decline, we can relate that, of course, to losses manufacturing. Most recently, Muncie losing Borg Warner, a large manufacturer. More recently, you have seen some increasing foreign direct investment. So you're kind of seeing these losses for 10, 15 years being offset by some recent gains from foreign direct investment. In particular, a company called Brevini, an Italian wind turbine manufacturer. If you've started to notice in northern Indiana a lot of wind turbines popping up, well, it makes sense to manufacture those somewhere close to their source, or somewhere close to their destination, because those are huge things that you don't want to, have a huge transportation costs associated with. And also, if you think about an engine, which a lot of these areas are kind of had this history of, an engine and a wind turbine actually are very similar, in which it's all about just getting a fan to spin, and then create propulsion, create movement. But anyway, so these are green jobs. This wind turbine component manufacturer that's located here in Muncie. This example of green jobs, which is the new thing, new hot thing. Those are just jobs that are related to environmental conservation of some sort. And so what you're going to see is a lot of companies deciding, should we go to Muncie, Anderson, Kokomo, Newcastle, which one should we go to? They're all very much similar, but oftentimes what Muncie has to its advantages, it does have Ball State there. And Ball State has recently been starting to expand their high-tech programs in the city, realizing that they have a problem of job loss, deindustrialization, and so beyond the university, Muncie is definitely an area of decline. And it's also a city that's very much divided. And so you have the Ball State side, and then you have the non-Ball State side. So it's a very much a university in which once you cross the tracks, once you cross the bridge, oftentimes, things change quite quickly. So you see large disparities in incomes, but also you got your students and then your non-students. And the students are clearly evident here in the population pyramid. You really see a problem once those students leave Ball State. They have a great time for those 4 to 10 years they're there. It's why it's called Funcy, but they're not sticking around. There's really nothing for them to do there. And so you see Muncie, the big challenge they have is attracting and retaining talent, because you're also seeing how that's young people who aren't having their kids here. So you compare United States average to Muncie, you see some clear disparities, especially amongst younger people. But you look at the top, you see Muncie, a lot like Terre Haute. Evansville, a lot like much of rural Indiana, is increasingly aging. And so you actually see more older people than the U.S. average. And like I said, its nearby neighbor is Anderson, which has also had huge negative effects of the U.S. automotive industry declining. So the example there is Delphi. DELPHI. It was a plant that closed down, and they're a huge customer of General Motors. What was nice about the Delphi was they very, very good paying jobs. It didn't require huge skill levels either. You didn't have to go off to 15 years of college like I did. So one of the things is that decline has essentially increased the amount of unemployment in the area. And so loss of jobs, and so you have higher unemployment, and so then subsequently you've got closings of schools. And so when I graduated high school in Center Grove High School in Greenwood in 1998, there were 3 high schools in Anderson. Today there's only 1. So you're seeing a school consolidation, and all that's related to the decline of people living there, people moving out, people saying, okay, I can't find a job here, I'm going to go somewhere else. So you're really seeing that decline there in Anderson. So the challenge there, how do you attract jobs? How do you keep people there? So your best and your brightest, how do you keep them there? How do you attract people to come and bring their facilities, bring their manufacturing, bring their operations to your area? And so one of the things Anderson is starting to do is starting to actually knock down a lot of these abandoned, no longer of use manufacturing facilities because they're eyesores. So if you're having people from outside the area come in and try to figure out if they want to move their facilities there, you've got a lot of these abandoned buildings. It doesn't look good. But one of the things you really notice, if you ever drive through Anderson, you can clearly see this loss of population. The roads are much bigger. You can see a lot of things being closed. A lot of closed down bowling alleys and things. So you see big, huge avenues and roads and all this stuff. There are hardly any people there. And so it's become very much a ghost town. And even before the economic recession, this was happening. So deindustrialization was happening here even back in 2002 and 2003. And that has so many effects. And so it's going to affect the housing market. So you see people asking for building permits, declining considerably. So this is definitely, when we see the loss of that one big industry or several big industries, it has a huge effect. And so this is kind of a cautionary tale. So right down in Greensburg, you've got a good thing going on with Honda. Down in Evansville, they got Toyota. But what happens when all of a sudden they say, we're out of here, we're closing the facility? Then you can see how it has a huge effect. And so there's high risk, high reward when you get in the game of having one big manufacturer, one big thing dominate your industry, dominate your economy. And here we see the population pyramid for Anderson. So we don't see at all the college influence there. And so there is a small college there, Anderson College or University, something like that. But it's very, very, very small. And so these private schools don't do much for increasing population. But you definitely see here that aging population. So here, maybe more than anywhere, you've got this problem. So you have a lot of people who've worked for several years for GM. And so they have a pension. And so they're just essentially retired early, or they're just continuing on and they're still getting a bit of a salary. Whereas you're seeing down at the bottom for your younger people, and once again, similar to Terre Haute, you see a sex ratio imbalance. And that once again speaks to the type of manufacturing that we find here. Anderson was mentioned in this article here called the New Ghost Towns, kind of these industrial areas that since seen decline. But one thing that Anderson does have kind of to its advantages, it's not too far off from Indianapolis, and even further, it's next door neighbors to Hamilton County, one of the fastest growing areas in the entire country and Midwest. And so one of the things is we can see for the future, I would argue that Anderson will be actually okay, but it definitely depends on growth there in nearby Hamilton County.